Republican Senator Tim Scott threw his hat into the ring for the 2024 Republican primary. And the reason that we're talking about this at the end of the show is because it's boring. And with all due respect to Senator Scott, not a lot of people really care that he's running for president. I am not a fan of Senator Tim Scott. I don't know him personally, so I'm sure he's a lovely person. His politics, however, are the politics of the squishy Republican establishment, and I don't have time for that. I have no interest in supporting a candidate who has caved to the radical left the way that Senator Tim Scott has caved. And what's worse is not just that he's a milquetoast Republican. The fact of the matter is he doesn't understand that. It's not like he's, say, like a Tulsi Gabbard who doesn't claim to be very, very Republican. She's just not a woke leftist. So she actually does occupy this sort of center ground because that's what her moral values dictate. That's not what Senator Scott is doing. Senator Scott occupies the milquetoast area of republicanism because he doesn't understand the reality of the political enemy that we're facing. So how's he going to fight back against it if he can't define what it is he's fighting? Now, what he said on the stage this morning, and I want to watch this video with you, but what he said on this stage wasn't offensive. It wasn't idiotic. It was just something that might have worked in Republican circles 30 years ago. But even if it worked 30 years ago, it wasn't a good idea. It's actually viewpoints like this that have allowed the left to capture our institutions. So maybe when we listen to this together, you're going to listen to it and think, well, there's nothing wrong with what he said. And that's true. There's nothing wrong with what he said. But the fact that he stopped where he stopped is hugely problematic. And I will lay out exactly why after we watch this video together. This was Tim Scott's announcement.
Grievance or greatness? Greatness! I choose freedom and hope and opportunity. Will you choose it with me? Yes! Will you join me as messengers of hope, as visionaries that believe that the strength of our ideas can change our nation again? I will. Let's go.
Okay, listen, I have nothing against Tim Scott personally. Like I said, I don't know him. He's probably a lovely person. The reason I'm so hard on politicians is because they're all doing it wrong. They all need to be criticized in order to be effective because right now they're not effective. They're not protecting our country from the domestic enemy that we are facing. And Tim Scott, unfortunately, is in that category. Listen, when the words that he said on that stage, victimhood or victory, and the crowd chanted victory. He then said grievance or greatness, and the crowd chanted greatness. I agree with all of that. That's good. That's good stuff. That's stuff that you should be teaching your children. It's stuff that we should be instilling in school children, in the next generation of Americans. That's properly ordered life that he's talking about, not to elevate victims and celebrate victimhoods, not to be a society of grievances where we're constantly at each other's throat, but to aspire for everyone to be great. That's good stuff. Everyone loves that. That's correct. That's great. However, the way that Tim Scott, or the way that he's missing the point here, is that our campaign system is not a system anymore where two political candidates are speaking to the same crowd, and it's whichever one presents the best ideas and eloquently explains what they can do to best serve the voters. And whichever one of those two people has the best presentation and most convincingly presents it wins the votes. That's not how it works anymore. It actually almost doesn't matter what a lot of voters think because the institutions that govern our nation are not the democratic institutions that we think about. The institutions that are making decisions about our way of life are things like the administrative state. We're not voting for the people in the administrative state. They are swamp creatures that can't be fired, that have been placed there by radical leftists sometimes decades ago. And outside of government, we have the teachers' unions that control what is being poured into the minds of our sons and daughters in the public school system. And we don't vote for Randi Weingarten, but she's the one that's controlling what goes into the minds of our children in a government-run school system. Or in the medical industry, right? The CDC and Big Pharma and the American Medical Association and the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics. These organizations decide how people are supposed to parent, what kind of medical procedures should be on a regular schedule, how we should react to things like gender dysphoria and other gender disorders, and promoting, by the way, the quote-unquote gender-affirming model. These people that have captured our institutions are not the people we're voting for. And so you can vote for someone like Tim Scott based on what he's saying because you agree that, yes, it's a good character quality to embrace victory over victimhood, to embrace greatness over grievance. Those are good character qualities, but it doesn't matter if the institutions are captured. And so any politician that is still campaigning like it's 1975, where all you have to talk about is the American spirit and recapturing the exceptionalism that embodies our nation, doesn't understand that, like, listen, our election system is not a system that you can be confident in the integrity of it, right? You can't be confident that people's voices are even going to be heard through their vote, right? And even if we have elected officials, we can't be confident that the swamp creatures that are actually making the rules that govern our lives aren't violating our fundamental rights and doing it. So, like I said, I have nothing personal against Tim Scott. He's probably a very nice person. He was also the largest pharma recipient, the recipient who got the largest amount of money from pharma when in Congress in the second half of 2021. Color me just a little skeptical of any member of Congress who holds this distinction. That's a lot of money. Almost $100,000 from Big Pharma. He also has worked with Cory Booker on police reform. Like, Cory Booker, come on. No. You don't work with Cory Booker if you're a super serious person on police reform, of all things. And Tim Scott in the Senate stopped two different judicial nominees of President Trump. One because the judicial nominee supported voter ID laws in North Carolina, which is the most common sense, non-racist thing possible. And the other one, he did not support. He refused to support because that judicial nominee had written a paper in college opposing the leftist redefinition of what diversity is. So forgive me if I don't think that Tim Scott has demonstrated that he understands the reality of the political enemy that we face. I could be wrong. He could start talking differently, but I do judge people based on their actions and not based on their words. And Tim Scott's actions have not impressed me as the person who can take down the Marxists and the communists that have captured our civil and government institutions and seek to topple the United States of America. When I think of a fighter, when I think of someone who would lead our country away from communism, someone who is unafraid to topple those Marxists and has the ability to do so, it is not Tim Scott.
Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.